Good afternoon. Welcome to Topics and Trends, our education program for Artexpo New York. We started doing Topics and Trends several years ago, and we offer a full range of seminars throughout all days of Artexpo New York. And I'm Linda Mariano. I'm the Director of Marketing for Artexpo New York, as well as all the shows that Redwood Media Group produces. And I just wanted to take a minute to tell you how fortunate you are this afternoon, because we have a very special guest. Jennifer Townsend is here. She is the Director of Product Development for Larsen Jewel. But more than that, she's also an incredible designer, someone who watches trends. And you know, we're all trend watchers a bit. And the first place that you might see trends, and you know, if you're looking and you're reading, and it's in the newspapers as well as in all the trade and designer magazines, the color trends, the design trends. And where does that first show up? That first shows up in the clothes we wear. And then the next place that it shows up is it starts to penetrate into home furnishings. And then what happens? Well, those design trends, those furniture trends, they all have a resonance with what we're all here about this weekend, art. So how does art fit into that scene? How do those trends impact how you create the mood and the feeling with your art collection? So Jennifer's here to share some ideas about all of that. And she'll probably tell you where she's just returned from. I can't quite keep track of where she's been because she travels the world, all the world markets, to really check out all of those trends. So here she is with Elements of Design. Jennifer?
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay? A little louder? So I'm going to start by just giving you a little information. I am the Director of Product Development for Larsen Jewel. My job is to research all of the insights and trends, see what's going on worldwide, and how that works. We're much more of a global market now, so it's not as segmented as it used to be years ago. Design within picture frame molding tends to trend slightly behind where the trends are from year to year when it comes to fashion and home interiors. So what we're always looking for, what are the major trends? So a little bit of the background on Larsen Jewel. Ooh, and I got too fast there. We're a manufacturer and we distribute custom picture frame molding. We have a worldwide reach. We are a global company, so we're on every continent. We work with teams all over to look at product development and figure out what's going to work best for each market, and the goal is always to come up with global launches if that's possible. And then we want to help tell the story and preserve all of our customers' memories. So just a few key facts about us. We are a Berkshire Hathaway company. We have been since 2002. We're headquartered in Norcross, which is right outside Atlanta, Georgia. We have 7 manufacturing plants, and those are all globally. So our main one started in the U.S. in Ashland, Wisconsin, and then from there we gained other manufacturers all over the world. So we have manufacturing in Asia, as well as 3 main plants that we have spread throughout Europe. We also try to be good stewards. We look at molding and make sure that they're coming from sustainable forests, land that is managed in a way that will continue to allow us to harvest wood in the best way possible. And we get sustainable forest certification whenever possible. We're also the largest manufacturer and distributor of picture frame molding, and then we do offer wood as well as a new line of MDF products, which you can see we do have a booth here today. Do you want to take a look at some of those? just so you can get an overview of our global reach. Like I said, we have operations and brands in 16 different countries. We've got manufacturing on all 3 continents and 1,450 global team members. So I'm going to start now and just sort of explain a little bit of the difference. A lot of what we started looking at is the industry of picture framing has changed over the years, and we're starting to see people buy in a really different manner. The first thing when I started with the company, and I've been with the company almost 2 years now, was saying, who is our customer now? Do we really know? Do our framers know? And if the answer is really no, which it tends to be sometimes, how can we help them figure out and help you guys, artists, designers alike, figure out who your customer is and what the best way is to work with them? So I started with breaking it down generationally and seeing what are each generation buying, what are their spending habits, how are they generally buying? And that led me into looking at trends. So there's a big difference between a macro trend, which is large and it's very driven by consumers. And that's where we tend to try and stay because that fits much better within the world of art and picture framing. And we stay away from micro trends, which just tend to be smaller. They maybe come on for a season or two, like fashion items that you see that kind of go out of style really quickly. But we work in a market that's longevity based. You want your art to stay on the wall for a long time. You want it to stay framed. So those are always long-term purchases, and you hope they're items that will be passed down from generations. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about statistics. I know that the group earlier was talking about that some. If you start with Gen Y, which is your millennial group, which a lot of people talk about now and say, how do we sell to them? That age range is 17 to 34. They look for a lot of personalization. They tend to stay away from the word customization because they think of things their parents bought that were customized years ago, and it sounds very expensive, and they tend to want to stay away from it. However, if the price is right, they'll buy. But it's a matter of you presenting the right product to your customer so that they can purchase. And in that case, price doesn't always matter. If it's something that they see visually and they know they really like it, then they will buy. They also buy mainly on mobile. So one of the statistics that I just looked at is globally about 25% of millennials make a purchase every single day on a mobile device. In the US, the breakout for that is about 15%. So if we're at a point now where they're buying 1/4 of their purchases daily, then we need to start looking at the future of that and what can we do as designers, as artists, to start selling to them in that manner. And a lot of that is going to come through things simply like Instagram. You can put a finished piece on there, put that it's available, put the price, and just say sold and send me an invoice. There's a ton of selling done that way, so that's just one suggestion to be able to do that with them. They like a lot of originality in what they're looking for, and also they're very driven by the information they're giving. So Yelp is big for them. 84% of them are more interested in what strangers have to say than what is tried and true from friends and family. So when you start looking at that statistic, you really have to be online and be present so that they know you're there. They like a lot of originality in their spaces. Like I said before, a handmade story. They're traveling more, so that vintage aspect, things they pick up in flea markets, bring home to frame to create that personalization in their space is very important for them. And they are your largest buying market, 92 million. They've surpassed baby boomers by almost 20 million buyers. And they've got about $200 billion to spend in 2017, which is the largest spending power that's been seen so far. So it's a huge number. When you look at Gen X, everyone sort of discounts them a little bit. They're 60 million buyers, so they're now the smallest generation. However, this is your luxury buyer. They have the expendable income. They've reached the point in their jobs where they've moved up or they're still transitioning. They're the ones buying larger homes, and they're very brand specific. So if they see something and it has good customer service that goes along with it, then they become very brand loyal. So you definitely want to be selling to this consumer. They lean a little more towards colorful spaces. They like patterning, but they like clean lines and lighter furnishings, which is where mid-century modern has had such a big surge, and you're seeing it now in the main markets. So it's sort of trickled down from your higher-end markets, and you're seeing it now in your Targets, your CB2s. That's a really important aspect because it means it's not going anywhere. And this year is the 25th anniversary for the movement of mid-century modern to have made a comeback, which so far is also the longest for any furniture resurgence, which is how it managed to trickle all the way down into the lower markets. And then your next range is baby boomers. They are retiring en masse. They're downsizing. However, a lot of them are preparing for retirement, so they want lighter and brighter spaces. They want new appliances, a lot of lighting in the space, which means new art, smaller pieces, because they are going into smaller homes. And that's a good opportunity as they hand pieces down to kids and grandkids to get them in and rework the piece of art or reframe it in a way that works for them so that you can continue to make them a collector as you move into the next generation. So from there, like Linda said, I travel all over the world as part of my job. I work with our manufacturers, so I'm usually in Europe about once a month. And then I travel all over the U.S., so I cover all the different segments from Midwest, East Coast, and out on the West Coast to see what's really happening. And from that, I take information from bloggers, from magazines that I read, a lot of different insights that I find, flea markets, because I walk those whenever I can, trade shows like Maison Objet in Paris, where we just were at the beginning of the year, and try and siphon all that information down into what I see as major trends. So you guys are seeing for the first time, I haven't presented these trends anywhere yet. So for 2018, we're looking forward a little bit, and I'll relate them back to 2017 for you too, and what those trends are currently. So the three that we see are that Nordic Feeling, that has a lot to do with Scandinavian and the mid-century modern movement. Your main customer base for that is Gen Y and Gen X. The next one is Taking Root. It's really about bringing the outside in as we become more urban. As a society, people still crave that texture of nature and the outside experience, but we need to find new ways to bring it indoors, and a lot of times that's through art and natural plants. And that really crosses all generations. That's kind of an innate human need, so that will always be present and has transitioned from 2017 to 18 as well. And then the last one is Modern Georgic. That also covers all three generations. As we buy houses, as we remodel older homes, this fits really well because you're taking your modern sensibility in the way we live now, and maybe you're buying a house from the 50s or 60s and redoing it, but you're putting those modern aspects of cleaner lines, concretes, brighter finishes in. It really crosses over into this and lends itself to a lot of different art styles. So I'll walk you through a little more in depth through each one of these styles. So the first one is that Nordic Feeling. So in 2017, we had a trend called retro urban, and that really is all about mid-century modern. All of the colors, the art that goes along with that, kind of the resurgence of what you saw from the great architects of the 40s and 50s post-World War II. So it's kind of only natural that Scandinavian would also be present in the landscape of design, because it followed that trend. So Scandinavian really started in the 50s and became more present and visible. You're going to start seeing a lot of shinier metals, so more golds. Whenever I say that golds are going to come in the market, I think people who have seen the market go through cycles of gold tend to cringe, or they just make a horrible face at me. But the look that we're going for is more modern. So you're talking cleaner lines, not so much vintage, not so much of the brown antiquing or the white antiquing that they used to put on golds. It's much more brighter, cleaner, crisp, that brass look. For those of you who lived through brass once, I'm sorry, it's not going anywhere. we're kind of stuck with it. But that fits really well within that Scandinavian look. So you've got a lot of more raw woods, more natural wood tones, not as high gloss when you look at furniture finishes, and then that translates, of course, into your artwork. Because you want the same thing. You want your finishes to have that longevity on the wall as well as with your furniture. A lot of leathers, so you get that natural look with textures that go along with it, and people are starting to blend the three in the furniture pieces that I'm seeing. So this is a lot of contemporary simplicity to it. Don't want to make you guys read through the whole thing, so I'll sort of go through it. The other part of this that comes in is, as we live really busy and hectic lives, we tend to crave more comfort and relaxation when we're at home. You just really want that downtime to be relaxing when you get home. So there's a movement that's called Hyuga. It's not pronounced that way and doesn't really translate in English, but it's a Danish word. And it basically means the quality of comfort or coziness. So we're seeing that really start emerging. It's been visible for a while now in Europe, but it's really starting to emerge now in the US. And it plays along a little bit with the harmony and nature side of it, because we're craving those textures. So you see a lot of the thick blankets, a lot more fur textures kind of coming into play, thicker grasses, those type looks. But very clean, very serene patterns. The nice thing about this is it mixes really well with black and whites, goes great with kind of geometric patterns. So you can get those colors, the pastels, the softer blues, the blush that's so popular right now from a color standpoint. All of those mix really well, and then you can mix them again with the natural pines, natural maples. And that's going to create longevity because people see things in that look of black and white. And when they see what else you can put with it, it really allows you to expand the color palette within this. Your main art themes that we see when I look at Instagram, Pinterest, Ticktail, Etsy, a lot of what I see coming onto the market, geometric patterns. Feathers are still really big within that art category. A lot of graphic wall calendars, they're doing them like really big and framing them out or floating them, which is interesting. Monochromatic artwork and kind of mixed in with colorful pieces. So you have a real serene and calm base to this look, and then they're putting the pops of color in with it to make the interest. So just a few images to go through and look at, so you can see the texture. You can see a lot of that just warmer, the gray tones, a little bit of that greige color, cool, pale, with the pops of blue that sort of go in as well. And so the next one is Taking Root. So the reason I chose this title was previously, 2017, we used the term harmony in nature. So it's really about bringing the outdoors in, just a new shift in minimalism. It's really heavily rooted in a natural environment. So as people are outside, they're going to parks, they're kind of exploring oceans, traveling, going places they've never been before. It's really challenging them to mix greenery and bring all those items into their home. You see a lot of the rattans, a lot of the seagrass cloth, all of those materials coming in to mix with this because it just goes so harmoniously with the nature theme. And then a lot of defected walnuts. We've seen a lot of use of natural hickories, which I haven't seen on the market in years. So just a lot more of those materials it's kind of the thought of perfectly imperfect. So it's okay for the wood to actually look like wood instead of being perfect like it was before. And that, again, blends really well. You'll see gallery walls in black and white mixed with the pines, the natural hickories, that very smooth, filled furniture look. This has a lot of botanicals and plant lives that are inspired with this trend. They mix really well with colorful canvases, and you see those alongside photography. A lot of kind of that vintage surf look. Again, pairing a lot of the artwork that is painted alongside sayings, things that relate to people that come from books, poems. All of those people, we see a lot of juxtaposition between those two themes. And you can see some of that here. You're also seeing, because this year we've obviously have the opportunity to travel to Cuba as Americans, so within the American landscape, heavy botanicals, the banana leaf, all of those tropical prints have come back because it's sort of that mindset of we couldn't have it before and now we can. And that really appeals to everyone. And then also within this too, you'll see a lot more succulents have kind of been on the market as like the plant for a while now, but you're really starting to see more cacti mixed in with that, and really new versions of tropical plants that do really well in the house. So that really fits well within this movement too. And you can see that by that image on the top right. As well as some of the differences in the pressed greenery, like the ferns, versus just staying with botanicals like you would in the Nordic trend. So the last one is modern Georgic. Georgic really means a rural or farm type setting. And I always hear people cringe a little bit when I say farmhouse style, because you think really, really rustic. But that's not really what this trend is about. Because we are remodeling homes, like I mentioned earlier, because we're trying to get closer into the city, a lot of those homes are older. So people are coming in and just completely redoing them. But in doing so, you're really making it your own. So you're taking those bones of the house, like the planked walls and things that you see on HGTV all the time, and you're figuring out, how can I take that and add smooth concrete? How can I take the whites, the blacks, and blend them so that you have longevity within the truly installed pieces in a home? This style mixes with almost any kind of material, geometric pattern, texture. It can be paired with conventional or non-conventional materials. Again, black and white is kind of a theme that's gone across all three of these trends. Because it pairs so well with everything. So it's something to definitely pay attention to, and people have a natural comfort level with it. If your eye can't decipher color really well, I've talked to several customers who have been colorblind, and they say, oh, I always just buy black and white because I can tell the difference between those two. So it's helping them understand the colors and how they work if you want to upsell on that side of color. And my suggestion, especially when framing, if it's a printed or a watercolor type piece, is upsell on the matte and really get the texture, the color in the matte board so that they can keep the frame classic and feel more comfortable with it. Later down the road, it's a great way to get them back in the gallery if they decide, oh, I've changed my whole look. I still love the frame, but I want to change out my matte boards. That's always a suggestion that I like to make. And that might be my bias as an interior designer for a long time. Again, this is really about personalization. So the theme that we had in 2017 was called A Curated Journey. So since we are a global society now, we travel more, friends bring things to us. Baby boomers are retiring, they're handing down things from their parents or from themselves. And a lot of millennials and Gen X are taking those pieces and saying, how do I personalize that? How do I create my life story so when people come in to my home, they can see who I am and where I came from, because it's much more important these days to have that history present. And they are also not the type that they will buy something and store it. There's a much more minimalist thought process. You know, they don't want it in an attic for 30 years, and they're much more transient, so they tend to move more often. So the thought of hauling all those boxes doesn't appeal to them, and you can see why. For those of us who've done it for years, when you live somewhere a long time and then you move and go, oh, why did I do that? So the next thing I'm going to show you, that's just a good overview of sort of what that look looks like. So it doesn't have to be farmhouse, it doesn't have to be kitschy or country. It can still be modern, look very classic, and have a lot of longevity. So I put together a number of style sets, and it doesn't matter if you're framing professionally or if this is something that you're looking for your own home, or as an artist if you're looking to find ways to match your particular art style to a frame style so that you can recommend for customers. So we took from all of these trends, we took what I call style sets, and you'll see how they pair back to each one of the trends. So the first one is a gray story. Gray is the new neutral. It's the base color that everyone uses. A lot of people don't love it. They're tired of it. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with a global market and it's large, it's going to kind of hang around for a while longer. But within this new neutral does allow you to pair with almost any color, because gray lends itself in directions that, a beige or a taupe is not going to lend itself. So it's actually a really great base color to work around, because you can go either direction to the cool or the warm side with your other colors within a home or within your framing. So it gives a lot of option. So I took from our gray story and went back through our molding. So we have Jen Harlan, who spoke a little bit earlier, if you heard her, could tell you the exact number of frames that we have. 2,500. So I went back through and said, we have to have a gray story within our frames. So what I put together was just a variation of those frames, different textures, different colors. Some of it has wood tones to it, but it has a gray wash on it. So these will go into kind of that classic range. And I tried to choose profiles that went completely across the whole gamut of what went really well with different types of art, different styles of home, so that it covers all of the trend categories. And there's 2 sets of those, so that's the second one. The other thing we'll see, so you'll see Salon 1789, and that is kind of our vintage French look. The thing that we're seeing, especially on the West Coast, I've heard a lot of our customers say, oh, we're seeing a big resurgence in wabi-sabi as well as feng shui. So they're taking these and doing a lot of framed mirrors and then matching those within the bathroom to other pieces that they use. So this is a really good selection for this, and it comes in a silver and a gold. So the next one, of course, I've talked about it, is the black and white. Pairs really well with a natural wood, pine, maples, your raw woods, which are starting to become popular. It's easily visualized in a space, and that's the reason for its popularity. It also relates really well, like I said earlier, with the modern Georgic movement, and it's just really about simplicity of design, profile, and color. So within that, we have a number of blacks, which are always going to be your top sellers if you're looking at frames. It's always the number one. And these come in a variety of different looks. So Bauhaus in particular has that lacquered appearance, and we're seeing that come back onto the market as you see some of those feng shui looks coming back, as well as lacquer walls in homes, and blending the color together with your draperies, things like that. And then on the white side, so everything from a more country look to that more modern look, and clean, really crisp whites. And within that modern Georgic, that's a really big theme. It's kind of white, 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 and how many different ways can you pair those textures and patterns while keeping that very monochromatic look. So the next one is exploration. So as we go outside more, again, this relates back to taking root. It really crosses all generations, all ages. It kind of hits the traveler, the outdoor enthusiast, and even the collector within that range. And you can see the different items that pair well with that. So when we start looking at types, you've got Havana, which is a really nice natural burl wood, relates back to being outside. Cranbrook is our really modern look. Penzano is an olive wood veneer that comes from Italy, where that molding is made. And then Aura, again, the natural wood with the staining and exposed grain work, and then a painted backside to give it that really clean, modern look so it doesn't get too country or rustic looking. And then a few others too. Lancaster really hits the reclaimed lumber look. And then this gets into your industrial looks as well. Oxide is our take on a steel, kind of that rusted look. And then Angus is leather, so you're getting that leather texture in, which looks really nice on the wall. The next one is layering. We're seeing more people layer. One thing that we see a lot of is Millennials and Gen X tend to want to scale down the size of the molding. So it used to be a much wider molding was what people were looking for, but it's a lot thinner now in profile. So this is a great area where you can show them how to stack and layer molding. And if you've got hints of silvers or golds or different textures within your artwork, it's a great way to pop those out and get something natural or neutral in and add a little bit of texture while adding a little bit of higher design to it. So you can see some of the different profiles that work really well within that. And it sort of covers, again, all of the cycles and different looks of design. So the next one is island. Again, this relates to island getaways, Cuba, really those pops of bright color. A lot of the murals that you're seeing, Anthropology is doing quite a bit of this. You can actually buy murals through them now, and they relate to some of these. And I've seen a lot of bloggers and designers starting to frame these pieces up and install them in a dining room where you would have traditionally done a painted mural. And you can see within some of that just a little bit of the pops of color that go in with that trend really well. So you get to have a little bit more fun within the island. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the Hyuga trend we see really big. So with these, a lot of that really neutral, really pastel palette that goes along with it. And then it sort of crosses, again, all of the different design gamuts with your grays, neutrals, and your wood tones. And then the last one I mentioned a little bit earlier was talking about within Nordic, the gold resurgence that's coming back in. So we wanted to cover that. It's really gold reinvented. We see a lot of this interiors now that is coming up. I think Z Gallery, CB, West Elm, they all premiered gold on the covers of their spring catalogs this year. So we're seeing a lot of that dual tone, so a single paint color with that pop of gold in the different categories, whether it's brass or the really bright brushed gold. So it kind of goes back to that Scandinavian style a little bit, but can still stay classic. So like within Lille, you get a little bit of that molten liquid gold, but you also can get a little of the brush texture as well. And then the modern with Andover, and again, Salon 1789 really hits that profile of feng shui or wabi-sabi that we're seeing. So the last thing I'm going to do is talk to you guys about how to style a gallery wall. So one of the major things I keep seeing in imagery everywhere is styling gallery walls. So I've got a little handout for you. My fiance didn't know that when he proposed to me, he would get to follow me around and do handouts too. So as he's passing those around, you'll see this image on your handout. And what's really interesting is there's so many different ways that you can do gallery walls in home, but I suggest these even if you just have your art or you have a gallery, and this is something where if you're looking to do something like Jennifer Harlan was talking about earlier in promoting with your customers and finding new ways to connect to them, if you find who the bloggers are that you work with locally, you can get them in and you could do a styling set using your artwork, asking them to come in with a frame or talking to whoever your local framer is, and getting them to help put these together. So you can teach how to do this and sell at the same time. So this is a great way to connect with customers. It's a great way to have photos for Instagram to pair with the blogger and get them to post it and really get a big burst of exposure. So you can see some of the different styles. I've just put them together and sort of named them all. You see a lot of the lineup. I see a lot of pinwheel done. The mixer and elegant are a great way to mix mirrors if you've got those in your shop and you're showing people how to reflect light or teaching them some of those aspects of art. It's a fabulous way to do that with them, and it's also a great upseller if you're doing some of that. And just so you can see some of those, what they look like translated. This doesn't appear to be something that's going away. I see a lot of bloggers, I see a lot of different online frame companies are talking to customers about this. You can even put something together and take from what I've given you, which really tells you on the reverse side of that sheet how to actually create a gallery wall. You can give them tips on spacing. explain to them how to cut out the craft paper and actually lay the art down, draw it, cut it out, use blue tape because it doesn't pull off any of the drywall or any of your finishes, and they can actually tape it up, and showing them the proper ways to mount and secure artwork. It's just a great way to get some exposure with your customers, as well as teach them something and make them repeat customers over and over again. Well, thank you very much for sitting with me today.